Today we'll look at the other commonalities between all four Gospels, which could be argued, therefore, to have come from tradition and therefore true. Although, since we know that the synoptics copied each other, there is a chance the writers of John may have also copied these few events from the other Gospels, these events we're going to look at today. Anyway, what we'll be doing today is to look at these events and eliminate them as we search for logically derived historical truth. If you haven't already watched it, this video comes before my other video titled The Proof for Jesus That Scholars Often Miss or Thereabouts. Hello, welcome to Faith in Logic. I'm Tanna Oka, and I attempt to explore historical topics from a purely logical analysis. Please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for new content. Now, there are a number of events reported by all four Gospels. These include the ministry of John the Baptist and the baptism of Jesus by him. So we have Jesus being baptized in the River Jordan by John the Baptist. This in all four Gospels, but in John it's implied more rather than directly narrated. The feeding of the 5,000. This is one of the few miracles recorded in all four Gospels. The triumphal entry into Jerusalem. Jesus enters Jerusalem riding on a donkey, thereby fulfilling prophecy. The Last Supper. Jesus shares a final meal with his disciples. Also recorded in all four Gospels, but in John, the discourse is more around the institution of the Eucharist, and the focus is more on the washing of the feet. Next, we have the betrayal by Judas Iscariot. So Judas betrays Jesus, which leads to his death. All four Gospels record this event. Jesus' trial before Pilate is also recorded by all four Gospels. Jesus is brought before the Roman governor, Pontius Pilate. This will lead us next to Jesus' crucifixion, which is not surprising because it's a central tenet of the Christian faith. All four Gospels report this event. Next, we go to the burial of Jesus and particular events around his burial. He's buried in the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea. All four Gospels mention this name and report this same event. Then we go to the resurrection, another big event in the Christian faith, but in particular the women going to the tomb on Easter morning. All four Gospels report this event. Now, to start eliminating these events and see which is closest to truth, the first criterion we'll use is to look for any event that is clearly a religious narrative or has that motive. This will cover a lot as the Bible is, no surprise, a religious book. So we'll have to eliminate first the feeding of the 5,000. That's a miracle and not something we can admit as historical. Then we eliminate the triumphal entry, which is there to portray Jesus as a king after David. Then we eliminate the Last Supper. This is to show a replacing of the Jewish Passover meal by this new Passover meal, which will later be linked to Christ's sacrifice. Next, we take out events linked to socio-political benefit. John the Baptist was a big figure, so much so that he is mentioned in the works of Josephus. To have Jesus baptized by him would be good endorsement for Jesus and his ministry. So John the Baptist's ministry is out. Next, we look at events that their plot in the story is too predictable and rather illogical. We take out Judas Iscariot. It is a common and predictable theme to have one of the group betray the master. And Judas needed to kiss Jesus, a supposedly very public figure, to identify him. Sounds too contrived. Now, all four Gospels report that Jesus died by being executed, and we can accept that as true. But if he were to die on earth, they would have no option but to have him die at a particular time in history, and that would have been under the Romans because they were the power at the time. And it had to have been therefore by crucifixion because that's what the Romans did. The Roman governor of Judea at the time, Pilate, would naturally then fall into these narratives. This is an event necessary for verisimilitude, so we have to eliminate Pilate. However, we now come to particular events around his death. All four Gospels report Jesus' burial in a tomb belonging to Joseph of Arimathea. We eliminate this also on grounds of religious narrative, because this was potentially written to fulfill the Isaiah 53 text, and they made his grave with the wicked and with the rich man in his death. That's what the text says. This leaves us with the other aspect of Jesus' death, which is that after he died, women went to the tomb and found it empty, and they also saw the risen Christ. This event, women going to the tomb, that is the only one that the writers had no reason to include in the narrative. In fact, by the criterion of embarrassment, as women in those days were not reliable witnesses, the writers had more reason to not include this than to do so. So it does have the trait of an event that was not only true, but also was not simply copied between the gospel writers. It would have been a tradition that they all inherited, even though each one reported it slightly differently. So this is how we eliminate everything else and come to this proof that a character on which the Jesus story was based did exist. As always, this is Faith in Logic. Thanks for watching.